Flight 2247 took off from Chicago O'Hare at 6:47 p.m. on March 14. The weather was clear. The aircraft was a Boeing 737-800, inspected and certified just 3 weeks earlier. The pilot had 12,000 hours of flight time. The co-pilot had 8,000. There was no reason to expect anything other than a routine 2-hour flight to Denver. At 7:23 p.m., air traffic control lost contact. At 7:24 p.m., the aircraft dropped off radar. At 7:31 p.m., local authorities received the first 911 calls. Residents near the crash site reported a fireball in the sky, an explosion that shook their homes, and debris raining down across 3 miles of farmland. The crash of United Flight 2247 killed 157 people. Men, women, children. Business travelers and vacationers. A high school basketball team returning from a tournament. A grandmother flying to meet her first great-grandchild. 157 people boarded that plane. 156 died. 1 survived. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to Soldier Stories for more incredible true stories of courage and mystery. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from today? His name was Lucas Parker. He was 8 years old. And when the rescue teams found him 12 meters from the main impact crater, lying on a patch of grass like he was taking an afternoon nap, they thought he was dead too. He wasn't. Not a single bone was broken. Not a single burn mark on his skin. His clothes were torn and dirty, but underneath them, his body was untouched. The paramedics checked him 3 times, convinced their equipment was malfunctioning. It wasn't. Lucas Parker had survived a crash that had killed everyone else on board. A crash that had turned a 175,000-pound aircraft into scattered wreckage across a 3-mile radius. It was impossible. The physics didn't work. The mathematics didn't add up. But Lucas was alive. And when he woke up in the hospital 2 days later, he told them why. Dr. Sarah Chin was a child psychologist with 15 years of experience in trauma cases. She had worked with survivors of car accidents, fires, school shootings, natural disasters. She thought she had seen everything. She was wrong. The FBI brought her in on the 3rd day. Lucas was physically healthy, miraculously so, but he hadn't spoken since waking up. He just sat in his hospital bed, staring at the wall, clutching a torn piece of fabric in his hand. Lucas. Dr. Chin pulled a chair close to his bed. My name is Sarah. I'm here to talk to you. Is that okay? Lucas didn't look at her. His eyes stayed fixed on the wall. You don't have to talk if you don't want to. I'm just going to sit here with you. Sometimes it helps to have company. Silence. Dr. Chin sat with him for an hour. She didn't push. She didn't ask questions. She just waited. Finally, just as she was about to leave, Lucas spoke. Where's my mom? Dr. Chin felt her heart crack. She had read the file. Emily Parker, age 34, seat 14C. Deceased on impact. Lucas, I'm so sorry. Your mom didn't make it. Lucas nodded slowly. Like he already knew. Like he had known since the moment he woke up. But the man saved me, he said quietly. He tried to save Mom too. But he couldn't hold both of us. Dr. Chin leaned forward. What man, Lucas? The man in the army shirt. He grabbed me right before we hit. He wrapped his arms around me and we flew. We flew out of the plane and he put me down on the grass. He said, seni bırakmayacağım. I don't know what that means. But he kept saying it. Dr. Chen's blood ran cold. The phrase was Turkish. It meant, I won't leave you. Can you describe this man? Lucas finally turned to look at her. His eyes were old, far too old for an 8-year-old. He looked like me, but bigger. He had a scar here. Lucas touched his left eyebrow. And he called me oğlum. I don't know what that means either. But it felt nice. Like he knew me. Oğlum was Turkish too. It meant my son. Dr. Chin excused herself and walked calmly to the hallway. Then she grabbed the nearest chair and sat down because her legs wouldn't hold her anymore. Lucas's mother was American. No Turkish relatives, no Turkish connections. Lucas had never been to Turkey, had never studied the language, had no reason to know those words. But Dr. Chin knew them. She had seen them in the file. Lucas's father, the father he had never met, was a Turkish-American pilot named Daniel Kaya. He had died in a plane crash 10 years ago, 3 months before Lucas was born. And Daniel Kaya had a scar on his left eyebrow. The investigation into Flight 2247 took 14 months. The NTSB analyzed every piece of wreckage, every data point from the black boxes, every radar record and maintenance log. The official conclusion: catastrophic engine failure leading to loss of control and uncontrolled descent. No pilot error. No mechanical negligence. Just bad luck. A 1 in a million failure that couldn't have been predicted or prevented. Case closed. But there was a footnote in the report. A section labeled Unexplained Anomalies. Anomaly number 1. The sole survivor, Lucas Parker, age 8, was found 12 meters from the main impact site with no significant injuries. Based on his seat location, 14B, window seat, mid-cabin, survival probability was calculated at 0%. The physical mechanism of his survival could not be determined. Anomaly number 2. The cockpit voice recorder captured an unidentified voice at timestamp 7 hours 23 minutes and 47 seconds, approximately 47 seconds before impact. Voice analysis confirmed it was male, adult, speaking in a language tentatively identified as Turkish. The words appear to be seni bırakmayacağım, meaning, I won't leave you. No passenger or crew member matching this voice profile was identified on the manifest. Anomaly number 3. A fragment of fabric found clutched in the survivor's hand was analyzed and determined to be olive drab cotton, consistent with military flight suit material from the early 2010s. No passenger or crew member was wearing such material. The footnote ended with a single sentence. These anomalies remain unexplained and are not considered relevant to the primary cause determination. Not relevant. A voice from nowhere. A survivor who shouldn't exist. A piece of fabric from a dead man's uniform. Not relevant. Dr. Chen couldn't let it go. She wasn't supposed to continue the case. Her job was done. Lucas was physically healthy, mentally stable enough for discharge, and the state had located his next of kin, an aunt in Wisconsin who had agreed to take him in. But the words haunted her. Seni bırakmayacağım. The scar on the left eyebrow. The olive fabric that Lucas still refused to let go of. She started digging. Daniel Kaya's file was harder to find than it should have been. He had died in 2016, 10 years ago, in a crash remarkably similar to Flight 2247. Engine failure. Uncontrolled descent. All 89 passengers and crew killed. But there was something different about Daniel's crash. He wasn't a passenger. He was the pilot. And according to the black box from that flight, Daniel Kaya had done something extraordinary in the final moments. When the engines failed and the plane began to fall, he had fought. He had wrestled the dying aircraft with everything he had, managing to glide it toward an empty field rather than the residential neighborhood in its original trajectory. He saved no one on the plane. They all died, including him. But he saved an estimated 200 people on the ground. The neighborhood he avoided was a school. An elementary school. 200 children were in that building at the moment of impact. Daniel Kaya died a hero. He was posthumously awarded the Air Medal for his actions. His wife Emily, 3 months pregnant at the time, accepted it at a small ceremony. A ceremony that Emily never told Lucas about. Dr. Chin found one more thing in the file. A photograph. Daniel Kaya in his flight suit, olive drab, military style. He had been Air Force before joining the commercial airline. He was smiling, handsome, with dark hair and kind eyes. And a scar on his left eyebrow. The same scar Lucas had described. The same face Lucas had never seen. Dr. Chin visited Lucas one more time before his discharge. She wasn't supposed to. She had no clinical reason to be there. But she had to know. Lucas was sitting by the window watching the clouds. The piece of olive fabric was still in his hand, now ragged from constant touching. Lucas, can I ask you something? He nodded. The man who saved you. You said he called you oğlum. Did he say anything else? Lucas was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice small. He said he was sorry. He said he should have been there. He said he's been watching me every day since I was born. He said he was there for my first steps and my first word and my first day of school. He said he never missed anything. He just couldn't touch me. Until now. Dr. Chen's eyes burned. Did he say who he was? Lucas turned to look at her. His eyes were wet. He said he was my dad. Dr. Chen reached into her bag. She had debated bringing this. She had told herself it wasn't her place, that it could cause more harm than good. But Lucas deserved to know. She pulled out a photograph. Daniel Kaya in his flight suit. The scar. The smile. The eyes that looked exactly like Lucas's eyes. Lucas took the photograph. His hands trembled. That's him, he whispered. That's the man who saved me. His name was Daniel Kaya, Dr. Chen said softly. He was a pilot. He died 10 years ago, 3 months before you were born. He was your father, Lucas. And from what I can tell, he was a hero. Lucas stared at the photograph for a long time. Why didn't Mom ever tell me? I don't know. Maybe it hurt too much. Maybe she was waiting until you were older. But I think, Dr. Chen's voice caught. I think she was wrong not to tell you. Because your dad loved you. And I think somehow he proved that when it mattered most. Lucas pressed the photograph to his chest, right next to the piece of fabric. He said one more thing, Lucas said. Before he put me down on the grass. He said, tell them what happened. Tell them I kept my promise. What promise? Lucas looked up at her. He said when I was inside Mom's tummy he used to talk to me every night. He used to say the same thing every time, I will always protect you. No matter what. No matter where I am. I will never leave you. Lucas held up the piece of fabric. I won't leave you. The story should have ended there. A miraculous survival. A grieving child. A mystery that would never be fully explained. But 6 months later something happened that made Dr. Chen believe. She received a letter. Handwritten, no return address. The postmark was from Turkey. Inside was a single page written in careful English. Dr. Chen, you do not know me. My name is Iskaya. I am Daniel's mother. I live in Istanbul. I have never met my grandson Lucas, but I have watched him from afar since he was born. I am writing because of what happened 3 nights ago. I was sleeping when I heard my son's voice. He was standing at the foot of my bed. He looked young, healthy, at peace. He said, and I did it. I kept my promise. He's safe now. I asked him what he meant. He smiled, that same smile he had as a little boy, and said, I was there. When the plane fell, I was there. I caught him and I caught my son. Then he said, tell the doctor. She'll understand. Tell her the black box heard me. Tell her the 47 seconds were enough. I woke up crying. I thought it was a dream. But when I opened my hand, I was holding something. A piece of fabric. Olive green. The same fabric from his flight suit. I don't know how it got there. I don't know how any of this is possible. But I know my son. He never broke a promise in his life. Please tell Lucas, his father loves him. His father will always love him. And his father will be waiting when the time comes to take him home. With gratitude, Iskaya. Dr. Chen read the letter 3 times. Then she booked a flight to Wisconsin. Lucas was doing well with his aunt. He had started school, made friends, begun the long process of building a new normal. But he still slept with the photograph under his pillow. He still carried the piece of fabric everywhere he went. Dr. Chen didn't tell him about the letter. Not directly. He was too young to process something like that. Instead, she told him a story. Once upon a time, she said, sitting on the edge of his bed, there was a pilot who loved to fly. He flew planes all over the world and he was very good at it. But the thing he loved most wasn't flying. It was his family. Lucas listened, eyes wide. One day the pilot found out he was going to be a father. He was so happy. Every night he would talk to his baby, even though the baby wasn't born yet. He would say, I will always protect you. No matter what. I will never leave you. Lucas's hand went to the fabric in his pocket. But something terrible happened. The pilot's plane had an accident. He didn't survive. He never got to meet his son. That's sad, Lucas whispered. It is. But here's the thing about love, Lucas. Real love, the kind that parents have for their children, it doesn't end. Not even when someone dies. It stays. It watches. It waits. For what? For the moment when it's needed most. Dr. Chen leaned closer. Your dad made a promise to you before you were born. And I believe, that when your plane started to fall, he found a way to keep it. I don't know how. I can't explain it. But I think, for 47 seconds your father was there. Holding you. Protecting you. Making sure his son would live. Lucas was crying now. Not sad tears, something else. Something like relief. He said he'd been watching me, Lucas said. He said he never missed anything. I believe him. Do you think he's still watching? Dr. Chin smiled. I think he'll never stop. Years passed. Lucas grew up. He went to high school, then college. He studied aerospace engineering, not because he wanted to forget what happened, but because he wanted to understand it. He never did. The physics never made sense. The mathematics never added up. By every calculation, by every simulation, Lucas Parker should have died on March 14th. But he didn't. On his 18th birthday, his grandmother Ice flew from Istanbul to meet him for the first time. She was 74 years old, frail but fierce, with eyes that looked exactly like his father's. She gave him a box. Inside was his father's air medal, his flight log, and a letter. The letter Daniel had written to his unborn son, never delivered because Emily couldn't bear to read it herself. Lucas opened it with shaking hands. My son, I don't know your name yet. I don't know if you'll be a boy or a girl. I don't know what color your eyes will be or what your voice will sound like. But I know I love you. I love you more than I've ever loved anything. More than flying. More than my own life. You are the best thing I've ever done, and you're not even born yet. Here's the thing about being a pilot. You learn very quickly that you're not in control. The weather isn't in control. The aircraft isn't in control. The only thing you can control is what you do when things go wrong. I hope nothing ever goes wrong for you. I hope your life is easy and happy and full of love. But if something does go wrong, if you ever find yourself falling, scared, alone, I want you to know something. I will be there. I don't know how. I don't know what happens after we die. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. But I know this, a love like mine doesn't just disappear. It can't. It's too big. Too strong. So if you're ever in trouble, close your eyes and listen. I'll be there. I'll find a way. I'll catch you. Seni bırakmayacağım. I will never leave you. Forever yours, Dad. Lucas read the letter. Then he read it again. Then he held it to his chest and cried, the deep, cleansing tears of a boy who had finally found his father. When Lucas was 28, he became a pilot himself. Not commercial, he couldn't bring himself to fly passengers, not after what happened. Instead, he flew search and rescue helicopters for the Coast Guard. He saved 147 people in his first 5 years of service. He kept his father's letter in his flight suit pocket. He kept the piece of olive fabric in a locket around his neck. And before every mission, he whispered the same words. Seni bırakmayacağım. On the 10-year anniversary of Flight 2247, Lucas returned to the crash site. It was a field now, quiet and green. A small memorial stood at the center, listing all 156 names. He added something to the memorial that day. A plaque, paid for out of his own pocket, installed with the permission of the families. Read. For the 157th passenger, the one who wasn't on the manifest but was there when it mattered. For Daniel Kaya, pilot, father, guardian angel. You kept your promise. We remember. Dr. Sarah Chin retired from psychology at age 60. On her last day of work, she cleaned out her office and found a file she had kept for over 20 years. Lucas Parker, case number 2247. She opened it one more time. Inside was her original assessment, her notes from those first conversations, and a photograph Lucas had given her on the day of his discharge. It showed a man in a flight suit, smiling with a scar on his left eyebrow. On the back, in a child's handwriting, were 4 words. He kept his promise. Dr. Chin smiled, closed the file, and put it in her personal bag. She would keep it forever. Because science couldn't explain what happened on Flight 2247. Mathematics couldn't quantify it. Physics couldn't model it. But love could. Love that crossed the boundary between life and death. Love that waited 10 years for the chance to protect. Love that caught a falling child in the final 47 seconds and carried him safely to the ground. Some things are bigger than science. Some bonds are stronger than death. And some promises once made can never be broken. Not by distance. Not by time. Not even by the grave. Seni bırakmayacağım. I will never leave you. Moral of the story, the love between a parent and child is the most powerful force in the universe. It doesn't end with death. It doesn't fade with time. It waits, patient and eternal, for the moment when it's needed most. And when that moment comes, it finds a way. Always. If this story moved you, please subscribe to Soldier Stories and share it with someone who needs to hear it. We bring you true tales of courage, sacrifice, and love that transcends the boundaries of the possible. Until next time, stay safe, stay strong, and remember, you are never alone. Someone is always watching over you.